Okay. Stop me if you've heard this one before, okay? I think we're done with the Oden flashback now. Okay? Now, you don't have to take my word for it, because using my mystical, magical future sight powers, eat your heart out, Katakuri, which, have you seen Katakuri's teeth? He could totally eat my heart out. Like, he could actually do that. But no, I saw the spoilers and the scans for the next chapter. We're not going to discuss that here, because here we're just going to discuss, like, the flashback in general, kind of like a final roundup, analysis sort of deal. Look at all the important stuff that happened in this 14-chapter flashback with Oden and Whitebeard and Orochi and Kaido and Roger and Joy Boys being mentioned, all the stuff there. We're going to take a look at that. But yes, suffice it to say, in the next chapter of One Piece, chapter 974, we'll be doing the review for that tomorrow on Sunday. We get back to the present storyline, and that's all I'm going to be saying about that for right now, okay? Now, how'd you guys feel about the flashback? I mean, I think I already said this in the last review to mention what you felt about it overall, but like first impressions, how do you think about it? It was very long. It was absolutely very long. It was made all the longer, I feel, just because, it was in the middle of winter break when it was like we were right in the middle of it, and then, One Piece takes like a 2-3 week break there for Shonen Jump in general, takes a break there for the holidays, so that made it feel longer. I think there was something like 3 or so breaks that Oda himself took. Oda got sick in the middle of it there. So, yeah, 14 chapters, but it probably felt closer to like 20 weeks because of how long it was. I went back and checked. It was like in October is when this started, and here we are in the middle of March, and that's just crazy, right? So yeah, it did go on a little longer than probably even Oda intended it to. However, I will say, we covered a lot of really important shit in this flashback, and even Oda himself said this, especially right in the middle, where it's like, I can imagine, like, Oda's trying to be like, all right, I gotta explain Oden's flashback, because that's the point of this in Wano. But Oden was also closely involved with Whitebeard and Roger doing stuff outside of Wano. So I wonder if Oda actually thought about that. If he's like, maybe I should just skip over that part. Or maybe I should just very briefly like, oh yeah, Oden traveled with Whitebeard for a couple of years, and then he traveled with Roger for a couple of years, and now we're getting back to Wano. We could have cut a few chapters out just by doing that. I feel like Oda probably considered it, because he's just like, well, talking about stuff involving Laugh-Tale and Roger, man, I mean, that's like endgame level stuff in this story, so maybe I shouldn't. And he said, like, he was even afraid of spoiling stuff for the end of the manga. But considering that after the Wano saga is over, after this whole battle with Kaido is concluded and Orochi's taken care of and all that stuff, I think we're just going to be moving on to the final saga of One Piece. Now, that's not to say, like, after Wano, One Piece is going to be done in, like, 1 or 2 story arcs. I think we're going to, well, I guess a story arc doesn't necessarily have to be long. I mean, Dressrosa and Wano are going to be very long story arcs. But, let's say, Wano gets concluded within, well, we're almost close to chapter 1000. I have no idea. But I think whatever after Wano's over, we're probably going to have 100 or 2, maybe chapters left of the story of this final saga, right? But, we're getting into the final saga of the story, most likely, so Oda probably felt it pertinent to, like, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a taste. I'm gonna wet your whistle a little bit here. Here, you see this water? This is the water of the future. Oh, yes. Taste that Laugh-Tale goodness. So, I think that was important for Oda to mention that, alright? But first, let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Heracles himself, embodied in manga format as a Japanese samurai, Oden Kozuki. Hoo! He took the stage. Very much like how a lot of Wano is like a kabuki play, in the flashback. It's like Oden takes the stage in chapter 960, and then he bows out at his execution, right? So, yeah, he's the centerpiece for this. Everything we learn is pretty much told from either his perspective or rather the perspective of his logbook, so keep that in mind. There were certain things in this flashback that Oden did not know. Like, for example, when Roger was leaving the crew, he said something to Rayleigh that made Rayleigh cry, and Oden's like, I have no idea what he said. When Shanks, first met Roger after they came back from Laugh-Tale, Shanks started crying after something Roger said. Once again, Oden doesn't know that information because he's the main character of this flashback. We're only learning about the stuff that he knew about directly, right? So, we had a lot of build up to Oden, you know, ever since, even before Wano a little bit, but after we got into the Wano, it was kind of like amping it up in an insane degree where it's like, oh my god, man, you know, Oden was this magnificent man among men, he was super strong and fast, and he had a crazy amount of stamina. The stamina on this guy was crazy. This man's balls, you know, like literally and very figuratively and very literally, were insane, right? Like, you know, Oden was this amazing guy, and we learned about him plenty from Kinemon and the other scabbards, and he was just an amazing man to follow, and part of that was explained, of course, in the flashback. We got to see how strong Oden was at the very, very beginning when he sliced a giant mountain pig down that was revered as a god amongst the people of Wano. Not really a god, but still, giant pig, the size of a mountain, just stomping around, crushing a capital. You know, that's, you know, pretty impressive that Oden was able he was able to slice this pig so expertly, the pig didn't die. I take that more for Oden's skill than anything else. You know, he was able to, like, slice the pig so the pig never even realized it was cut in half, even though part of it was over there, part of it was over there. It just stitched it back together, and the mountain god is still alive. It still hasn't died yet. It'll realize that Oden cut it maybe in a couple more decades. The mountain god will be walking around like, oh, wait, I got cut! And then it'll finally die at that point, right? That's how much of an expert Oden is. But also, another part of this whole thing that Oda really wanted to showcase was the absolute injustice that Oden suffered, okay? Now, Oden's really good at that shit. He is really good at building up, like, here's an amazing character that you're gonna know and love throughout this flashback. There's, like, every Oda flashback is broken into two parts, mainly, okay? There's a lot of different parts to every flashback, but two halves, mainly. The half where everything is good and happy, and then the half where shit gets real fast, okay? And so we first off, hey, here's Oden. He's walking around the flower capital. He's gathering his scabbards. Denjiro and Kinemon, they love him. They respect him. He saves the people. He does what he wants. And he's journeying throughout the land, and he's just doing his thing, right? And, you know, eventually all the people of Wano become to revere him and love him. Whitebeard likes him. Roger likes him. He goes on this epic adventure of a lifetime. He gets to see Laugh-Tale, helps out Roger, figure out the Void Century, Joy Boy, the One Piece treasure, all that stuff. Man, we're really loving Oden, aren't we? Yeah. Then everything changed when Orochi was a dick, which is pretty much all the time, okay? So, yeah, we're really good at that. So how did you feel about that? How did you feel about the whole spin we had it after Oden got back to the flower capital? He's like, I'm gonna cut him down in one move. And then we find out Higurashi and Semimaru are a thing with the clone fruit and with the barrier fruit, and the deal that Oden breaks with Kaido and Orochi. How'd you feel about that spin there? Personally, my perspective on it is the same when I did the review. The perspective on it is pretty much like this. It's like, okay, yes, Oden wants to make sure his citizens are safe. He wants to make sure everything's taken care of. So when Orochi and Kaido basically have this deal, Orochi and Kaido pretty much rule over Wano at this point. They have all the cards there. You know, and at the end of the day, like, even if Oden did not agree, you could always have Higurashi transform into Oden and then do this anyway. You know, Oden was an incredibly strong fighter, but a straight-on fight between him and Kaido, I mean, that would have been rough even for Oden back then, right? Understandable, right? Oden might have won, but it's just, like, it's not an easy fight either way. So, I get Oden's perspective here where it's like, okay, Orochi, you guys are holding all the cards here, so I'll listen to you, and I'll dance naked in the street every week for years if it means that you release the people that you have kidnapped as the tributes and stuff like that. Once again, though, the problems I have are very obvious. Like, number one, you can't trust Orochi as far as you can throw him. And once again, he could always go back and you know, just welch on the deal whenever he wants because he's Orochi, he's the Shogun, and he has all the power here. And there's Kaido, right? You know, and I did say something in the review. I'm like, how did Oden even make sure that all the people were being, you know, saved and stuff like that? You know, how did he do that? I think it was something in the chapter where it was like he traveled Wano to make sure everything was okay. And like, what, did he travel throughout the entire country and knock on every door to make sure that the people weren't being kidnapped anymore? You know, I was like, hey, are all your loved ones accounted for? Yep, okay, cool, next house. Hey, are all your loved ones accounted for? Yep, awesome, great. You know, some people did mention, though, that Oden was friends with Hyogoro and his wife and the Yakuza at that point, so it's very likely, it's very possible that Hyogoro also kind of kept tabs on everything in the country to make sure no one was being kidnapped. you know, that's good, but even then you could see that, like, Orochi could instill the fear into the people and be like, you know, hey, even if your loved ones get kidnapped, don't tell anyone because, you know, we have the dragon god at our back here, and so you better not tell anybody, you better just act like everything is fine. The point is that, yeah, Orochi could have went back on it at any point. I think the logical thing to do in this situation would have been as soon as Oden found out about the barrier fruit, that he couldn't cut down Orochi, he found out about Higarashi's existence, found out about the threat of Kaido, really, because Oden clashed with Kaido very, very briefly during that first meeting. I think what Oden should have done is he should have accepted the deal, like, ostensibly. I knew I was gonna mess up that word. I'm like, that word is coming up. Okay, ostensibly, Matt, you gotta say the word. You're gonna mess it up. You're gonna mess it up. No, I'm not, brain, and I messed it up, but whatever. Okay, you know the word, all right? So he should have accepted it ostensibly, and then, like, okay, Orochi, I'll do what you say. I accept your deal. And then he should have walked out. He should have done the dance, you know. Oh, look at Lord Orochi. I mean, look at Lord Oden. He's dancing like an idiot. Haha, I am Lord Orochi. Right, and then after that, Oden should have went back to Curry. He should have had a private meeting with his scabbards. And he should have been like, all right, guys, this is what we need to do. Now, there's a traitor involved here, so now that wouldn't have been a good idea. But I'm just saying, at the time, that would have made more sense logically than just keep on dancing like there's no tomorrow. You know, gather up, you know, honestly, not just his own scabbards, but everybody in Curry, and just be like, all right, everyone, this is our country, we're gonna take it back. You know, this, who's with me? Who will stand with me, Kozuki Oden? You know, like, and this is before he was well known as the Idiot Lord. Like, let's say he danced once naked in the capital, but he's like, I was just doing that to placate Orochi. We're raiding freaking Flower Capital today! You know, I think that a lot of people would die in that battle, absolutely, 100%. But I think the citizens, because they're so steeped into the tradition of Wano Kuni, and they know the Kozuki clan is still the rightful shogun and all that stuff, and that Orochi basically took it for himself, I think you'd have a lot of people that would stand up, samurai and peasants alike. There would be peasants that'd be like, you know, damn straight, this is not his country, this is the Kozuki's country, Oden is the rightful shogun, we're gonna rise up and fight him even if it means my death. Because that's the people of Wano, that's what they do. They're very loyal in that regard. Now, after 20 years, I mean, the fire has definitely died a little bit there. Not completely snuffed out, but definitely abated. But I think if Oden would have done that as soon as he got back, as soon as he found out the situation with Orochi, if he would have just been like, all right, this is our country or it's death. That's pretty much the only outcomes. Either we beat Orochi and we get the country back and I'll be the shogun, or we fail and we die, but we'll die for the country that we love and we, you know, we cherish. You know, onward to the Flower Capital! And, you know, by Oden's back, I could see all the scabbards. Even the traitor at that point might not be a big deal. You know, if you just rally everybody together at once and you go. Of course, there's going to be people of the country that don't want to fight, but I think you would definitely get a lot more of a fighting force back then, especially since now. And also, after 20 years, Kaido's forces have also, you know, increased in size as well. So I think that would have been the way to go about it. And eventually, Oden did do a fight against Kaido with his own scabbards, you know, but by that point, it was kind of a little bit too little too late, right? So, yeah, how did you feel about Oden's personality? How did you feel about his, the way he accepted the deal and his interactions with various characters? He was very Luffy-esque. In fact, I feel like for that one particular flashback, Oda's like, well, we're not going to get Luffy for a while, so in lieu of Luffy, we're going to have Oden doing the, oh, I love this island, that's awesome, and just jumps on it, and he's like, that's a very Luffy behavior, very Will of D-esque behavior, even though we don't know Oden had the Will of D. He probably did, and even if he didn't have the D, Oden had the D. Let's be straight up here. Next up, let's talk about Orochi. So, this is the flashback where we find out about what Orochi's deal is, why he's such a douche nugget. What did you think? I mean, like, honestly, I didn't think there was going to be something really elaborate to this. I didn't think there was going to be something like there's this really, really layered, rooted reason why Orochi acts the way he acts. Oda chose to keep it very, very simple. Basically, his family was persecuted for years. It kind of lends to the whole vicious cycle, vicious circle sort of deal, where it's like the people of Wano treated the Kurozumi clan like dirt very poorly, you know, to the point where they would even, like, hunt them for sport. So by the time Orochi got to power, he's like, okay, well, you treated my family like absolute shit, so what goes around comes around, right? In that regard, I mean, I can't really blame Orochi. I can't say, like, oh, that's a completely illogical step to take. I mean, like, imagine if every single person imagine that your great-grandfather did something really jacked up back in the day, somebody that you never even met, someone that your parents might have never even met. And now here we are, generation later, and, you know, your family is still being, like, hunted for sport. Like, oh, there's the Smith family. I'm just using a very generic name because there's a lot of Smiths. There's the Smith family. If that would feel injustice, would you not? Like, would you not feel like that's bullcrap? I had nothing to do with what my great-great-great-great-grandfather did. I didn't even know the guy. And yet I have to live in fear, constantly, like, living in ramshackle old hovels on the edge of town in the woods, struggling to survive just to have enough food to eat because some bullshit happened like 100 years ago. Like, this is ridiculous, right? So, you know, Orochi being raised in that environment and then also eventually meeting Higurashi and Semimaru and then just filling his head with that even more so, you know, it clicks. It clicks for me. I mean, Orochi's still an idiot, you know, he's a right bastard, but it's like, at the end of the day, I understand where he was coming from. And you know what? Adopting that mentality, Orochi does not want to, like, improve Wano for just the Kurozumis. He doesn't want to, like, you know, change the country so his family rules over it for hundreds of years. No, he just wants to run it into the ground. He's just straight up chaotic evil. I just want to watch this country burn. But not quickly, slowly. I am Lord Orochi. Now, that voice doesn't work. I am Lord Orochi. You know, so, hey. Yeah, I mean, like, it's a simple backstory, but does this not happen throughout history? I used the example with World War II, the ending of World War I, and how that set up Germany to be a place that, you know, Hitler could rise to power, and then World War II eventually happened. There's a book that I read a couple years ago called Escape from Camp 14, which is about someone that grew up in a prison labor camp in North Korea. And in the book, it also talks about pretty much anybody that back in the days of Kim Il-sung, you know, the original founder of North Korea, anybody that was against him back in the day, back in like the 40s and 50s, even their grandchildren now are like in the same way, like they're the untouchable sort of deals. Like, no, you know, your family was against the supreme ruler back then, so you're against the supreme ruler, you're on the blacklist now, and that's just how it goes, right? Like, that's just how it is. So that stuff happens in our real world, and Oda's always really good about bringing stuff in our real world and throwing it into the story. So you could say like that, you know, Orochi's plan is just, you know, it's very cliche, it's very standard, like, action movie villain, but, hey, it kind of happens in our world, so I guess it makes sense in that regard, and I like it. I like the way that, like, hey, he's keeping Orochi, he's not trying to, I mean, you feel a little bit of sympathy for him when he's a little kid, but after he becomes an adult and he starts on this massive plan with Higurashi and Semimaru, you lose what sympathy you had for him, but if anything else, it really just teaches you of how you should treat your enemies upon defeat. Like, let's say, you know, Orochi gets straight up killed here, but let's say there's some other members of the Kurozumi clan still surviving in Wano, treating the Kurozumi clan the way, like that would, like, oh, you're related to Orochi, so therefore we're gonna punish you to the fullest extent, and everybody after that, we're gonna punish them as well. Like, all you're doing is just perpetuating the cycle at that point. So I think whenever that happens, we don't think Orochi has any children or anything like that, and since he wants to run the country into the ground anyway, he probably wouldn't have had any kids. But if there are, like, any enemies that are left in Wano after the arc is over that are, like, imprisoned or something, like, these are Orochi's men that served his every will, we need to torture them to the furthest, like, that's just, you know what you're doing at that point. Punishments do need to be laid out. You know, banishment from the country would probably be simplest. But if you just treat their, like, oh, these are the people that followed Orochi, their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids, they're all going to be on the blacklist from now on. That's not helping anything, that's just perpetuating the cycle. So hopefully they'll break that when we get closer. Talking a little bit about Whitebeard and Roger, Shanks as well, he was there in the background. Blackbeard was as well, we got some stuff about Blackbeard there. You know, it was just really nice. I mean, we didn't find out anything crazy new about Roger or Whitebeard, like stuff we just didn't know about already. Like, we knew about Whitebeard's crew a little bit more, like what his crew looked like 30 years ago, what Roger's crew looked like 30 years ago. We found out, probably the most that we learned about Roger at this point was the way he fought. fought. From what we see, he didn't have a devil fruit, he fought with a sword, he knew hockey, and he knew it well. Alright, he knew it very, very well with his mighty hockey blade. Aversion to divinity was the name of his technique, which makes sense because he's a member of the Will-O-Dee. He fights against, the god, they're the enemies of God, the devils, so to speak. So that makes sense there. His clash with Whitebeard, Oda just wanted to draw that just for the sake of, like, I want to draw Whitebeard fighting with Roger, here we go! It's not going to be the first time, it's not going to be the last time we're going to see that, but it was the first, so there we go, right? Beyond that, it was just fun to journey with Roger. It was fun to get a feel for his personality. We already knew what his personality was, but we got to spend so many, like a few chapters with him. That was really nice. That was really nice to get a feel for his personality, and I think that'll definitely set up things for later when we get into Roger's backstory, something that's focused mainly on Roger. I already made some videos about Laugh Tale and everything, so I feel like I shouldn't bring that up as just being redundant. We didn't find out that much about it beyond just the actual name of it, which was already revealed in Stampede anyway, and then we found out the nature of the One Piece, whatever it was. They arrived a little bit too early for it. This leads back into theories involving Shirahoshi, because that was really mentioned there. We got to see Neptune at a younger age. We got to see the road poneglyph at Fishman Island. It's no longer located there. So, yeah, we pick up a bunch of stuff, but that'll be important in other flashbacks and other parts of the story later on. Not necessarily all integral on Oden, except for the fact, of course, that Oden could decipher poneglyphs, and he passed this knowledge. He helped out with Roger and everything like that, too. We got to see Whitebeard more. We got to see how he treats his family, how rough it was for Oden to join, but how Whitebeard accepted him as a brother in arms, connections back to Izo and how he joined the Whitebeard crew and everything like that. So we got a lot of really cool stuff with Whitebeard and Roger in this flashback, and I'm happy Oda included that. The scabbards. Okay, so we didn't find out too much about every single scabbard. The ones that Oda mainly focused on here in this flashback were the ones that were introduced during Wano. So obviously the scabbards we were already introduced to in the story, like Raizo and Kanjuro, Nekomamushi, Inuarashi. We don't learn too much about them extra in this flashback, except for how they joined up with Oden's crew. Like Raizo was out in the jungles and, in the Udon region. That's how they found him. He left the Oniwabanshu. But mostly we focus on the past of Kawamatsu. We learn about his mother and how, she always told him to just tell people you're a kappa. Don't tell people you're a fishman. So we learned about Kawamatsu's past. We learned about Ashura Doji's past, ruling over Curry, and how Oden defeated him. We learned about Denjiro a lot. This was the first introduction to Denjiro, and then we ended out the flashback, of course, with Denjiro being Kyoshiro. We also learned a lot about Kinemon. Now, Kinemon we already knew a lot about beforehand, because he was the first scabbard we got introduced to at Punk Hazard, but it was also fun to learn about him because he was the leader of the scabbards, kind of like their commander, and we got to find out about what his life was like at a young age, his relationship with Osuru and Denjiro, and he was one of the first people to follow Oden. So I'm glad we got to learn a lot about Kinemon here, along with the other ones that we got introduced to in this arc. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it, right? I like that there. You know what? I'm not going to bring it up because I'm doing the review tomorrow. It's just an extra day. We'll mention it then. Okay, so Shinobu! A lot of Shinobu action in this flashback, and that's not just because she was drop-dead gorgeous, busty ninja girl Kunoichi back in the day. I mean, she was, but I was surprised of how much Shinobu was focused on here. Her love for Oden, her strife for what was happening, even up until the last chapter where they were escaping from the Flower Capital, Orochi's on their heels, and Shinobu's like, can I join you guys as a vassal of Oden? And Kinemon's like, well, I mean, we all joined basically of our own accord, and the situation right now, Oden's kind of dead, but yeah, if you want to join, go for it. And Shinobu's like, it's almost like, Shinobu feels genuine, regret for not being able to spend as much time with Oden as she would have wanted to. She would have definitely not wanted to work under Orochi and his Oniwaban. If Shinobu had the opportunity, she would have definitely have traveled with Oden, with Whitebeard and Roger, just like Izo did, and Neko and Inu. I think she feels left out, and that's the sad thing. It's just like, I always wanted to be with Oden. I always wanted to be a scabbard. I always wanted to travel with him outside the country. I wanted to see the world. And I just never got the chance. This sucks. Not saying she was, romantically involved with Oden. I mean, everybody's an Oden sexual, okay? Everybody. Doesn't matter what your gender is, okay? Or your sexual orientation. Everybody loves Oden. But Shinobu was like always the one that's on the sidelines, like observing everything from afar and just wanting to be part of that group, but never really had the opportunity to. But that actually ended up working in their favor because she ended up being able to be like a spy. She was the one that observed the conversation between Oden and Orochi and revealed to the crowd and everything like that. She's the one that provided the weapons for the scabbards after they escaped and jumped into the future. Like, if it wasn't for Shinobu, then Kinemon would not have his swords in the present. Kanjuro wouldn't have his brush. They wouldn't have their weapons that they utilized during the Dressrosa Punk Hazard arcs, okay? So that's all Shinobu that helped out there. So yeah, she was a very integral character to this flashback, more so than I thought she was going to be. And I hope that in the future now we get to really see a little bit more action from Shinobu. I'm really, it's a pleasant surprise. Not something I was expecting, but something I'm really interested in. Kaido. We got some stuff with Kaido, not as much as I would have liked. We did not get really the whole story on how Kaido and Orochi ended up even meeting. Like, how did that first interchange even meet? Like, did Kaido just land at Wano one day and is like, well, this is a weird island? And Orochi's like, heh, I hear you're a strong pirate. Would you like to join my island? Not really my crew, but you know what I mean. Like, was it like that? Was Orochi just made aware of Kaido's existence through the back, the back channels, the underground and everything like that? And he's like, I hear this pirate named Kaido is quite strong, and I hear he could turn into a dragoon. I will enlist his power, So I would have liked to see that. It was kind of just like a thing where they arrive back at Wano and Kaido was already just, hunkered down on Onigashima, just there already. So I would have liked to see some more of that. But you know what? Oda might be saving that for Kaido's flashback, Kaido's little backstory that we'll probably get. Probably not going to be as long as Oden's, but we're probably going to get a little bit of what makes him tick and everything like that. His conversation with Oden, his last conversation he had, where he was just kind of like, after the whole boiling oil thing, and he's stating dead to rights, he's, loading the gun up, about to shoot Oden. He's like, Oden, they're going to be saying things about this for the rest of time. You made your mark on the country, click, but I have to kill you now. That's just how this is going to go. There's no other way out of this. And that last exchange there where he's like, I've already taken care of that old bag after what she did, transformed into Momo. That wasn't right. So you can at least take that, some solace, whatever solace that provides you, to the grave. And Oden's last words to Kaido were pretty much just like, make sure you train up, Kaido. Make sure you train. Oh, don't worry, Oden. I'm going to be doing deadlifts every day. That won't make my legs any stronger, even though they will, because I'm so tough they go beyond that. But yeah. And then he shoots him. So, that was something, at least a little bit more of Kaido's personality that we haven't really revealed yet. All right, that was nice. And even up until Kaido's last words to Momo, when he was like holding Momo out over the balcony of Curry Castle, and he's just like, what's your name, kid? What are you doing? And Momo's like, I am Kozuki Momonosuke, and I'm gonna be the new shogun of Wano like my dad. And Kaido just looks at him like, ugh. Your dad shoved that dream into you. You don't even think. You're such a child. That's not even what you really want, I can tell. He just passes him down. So, yeah, Kaido is very much interested in the Kozuki clan and all of that and what they stand for. Definitely more so. Orochi just took the paranoia angle with it. Kaido took, like, what does it mean to be a Kozuki? Honestly, you know what it kind of reminds me of? This is a weird comparison, but just roll with me on this. Endeavor and All Might. Their relationship in My Hero Academia. Later on in the story, after All Might retires, Endeavor is very, very curious about what that symbol of peace really meant. And he asked All Might about it. It's like, All Might, what is that symbol of peace? What's this thing? This intangible thing that you did? What does it really mean? Kaido seems to be like that a little bit with the Kozukis, where he's like, what is this thing that the Kozuki clan embodies? What is this thing that Oden died for? That seems like something Kaido's very much interested in, so we'll see what that's going later on. Finally, the last thing I wrote down here was Joy Boy. Okay, so we learned a little bit more about Joy Boy, emphasis on little. Basically, it was just revealed that the way Oden talked about it was that, Joy Boy was somebody that traveled through time with some kind of powers, like maybe it was like the previous user of the Toki Toki no Mi or something. Well, he traveled through the past, and now he's going to arrive sometime in the near future, and Wano has to be awaiting his revival. Is it Luffy who's Joy Boy, or is it going to be the actual Joy Boy of legend that time traveled? I think it's going to be the former. No, wait, the latter? Wait, the Joy Boy's going to come from the past. That's what I think, okay? But, the idea that Joy Boy might be like he might have reincarnated into Luffy, or his will went to Luffy, that's also a viable option there. But we did mention a little bit stuff about Joy Boy. Also, Semimaru and Higurashi, but we know they're dead now, and their fruits went over to,
we know their fruits went over to Mr. Two Bonclay and Bartolomeo, respectively. We did not know how Semimaru died, but I'm going to assume it was just of old age. Higurashi got killed by Kaido, so there's that too. We do get a little bit more. Okay, I guess I wasn't 100% truthful. The flashback from like 20 years ago, that ends next chapter. We get a little bit of a flashback, but only like a flashback like a couple of months ago. But we resume the present storyline in the next chapter. So there's some extra stuff, but I'll include that in the review tomorrow. This is already about a half-hour long video. So yeah, overall though, on a scale of Foxy to Roger, where would you rank the Oden flashback arc here in Wano Kuni?
I would probably put it, because I really love world building and all that stuff, I would probably put it at an 8. 8 or a 9, to be honest with you. It was long, sure, but we found out a bunch of stuff here, and I'm very curious on how this is going to connect back into the future, especially since, you know, with time travel involved, the time in the future, all that stuff connects back as well, so, like, quite literally. So, we'll see where it goes, but thanks for watching, everybody, and tomorrow we'll get to the review. Tekking101 signing out in honor of Oden Kozuki.